So a faculty member primarily teaches and does research, but also helps with residential life and making students feel comfortable here and maturing. In doing that, team members are really relating to one another and relating to one another as residents in a community would. So it isn't the same as coming to work at 8:30, doing what your tasks are, leaving at 4:30 and goodbye. It's not like that. So in 2004, I organized a remembrance, the first ever Holocaust remembrance at UNH. And at the beginning, it was a very personal thing. It was primarily a personal thing. It wasn't very much of a communal thing. And the reason that it was a personal thing has to do with my own background, that my parents both had fled from Nazi Europe and had found refuge here in the United States. And by midlife, it took me midlife until I was a community member at UNH. It wasn't until then that I really learned my mother's story. There was conflict within the family, and conflict in the sense that my mother urged her parents to emigrate, as most German Jews did, but they refused. They refused up until Kristallnacht, until November 1938, when it became all too clear that my mother, the teenager, was correct. And by then, as a teenager, my mother, and it was so unbelievable, that she prepared to leave. She prepared in many ways. She prepared to learn English. She hadn't known any English. She had learned some French in school, and of course, German was her mother tongue. She learned English. She trained as a nurse for nursing, which she could do in the Jewish community, not in the general community, because she felt if she had some skills, she'd be better off. And in the summer of 1938, when Europe was on the verge of war, it was the period in which Hitler had already taken Austria and was demanding parts of Czechoslovakia, and Europe was on the verge of war, my mother wrote to the British Home Office asking for a visa and a work permit against the advice of her parents. Now, at that time, she was 17 years old. And when I interviewed her in the 1990s for the first time, because I had not known any of this, and I said, "Mother, who wrote the letter for you?" And she said, "I wrote the letter." I said, "No, surely. There must have been an advisor, a family advisor, or an attorney." "No, I wrote the letter entirely myself." What I wouldn't give to see that letter that she wrote, having learned English herself, and writing to the British Home Office asking for a visa and a work permit. And she received one. And in 1995, I gave a talk here on it, and I was struck by the reaction. I was struck by the large number of people who attended, and it was a very moving presentation for me. It wasn't a humdrum kind of a presentation. But I was surprised at how many people came, and the fact that they also were deeply moved. As it was emotional for me, it was emotional for them, and there was a kind of a wavelength thing that was going on there. It's what happened at that event and in the years that followed in organizing it and the way it came off that really has had an impact on me and on this community. What I learned in sum is that the community has a membership that is caring and supportive. Caring in the sense that they understand someone else's story. They want to hear someone else's story. And supportive is a different thing. Supportive meaning if you have something to do, you have a project that you want to undertake, like a remembrance event, they will help you. And our program indicates the large number of people who contribute. And they contribute voluntarily. It is not in their job description. It is not what they do when they come to work in the morning. So yes, it's become very clear over a period of 16 years that this community is a very caring and supportive one. It's a wonderful place to be. It's a wonderful place to work. And I think it's one of our appeals to students.